Hello, Rach. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks so much for taking the time to meet with me today.
Of course.
So you're in the US, right?
I am. I'm in Minnesota outside Minneapolis.
Nice. Cool. What's the weather like today?
I took my dog for a walk and I had to wear like a pretty warm jacket and a hat. It's breezy and cold. It's 41, but that's still kind of warm. I'm sure kids around the University of Minnesota, dudes are wearing their shorts.
Yeah, I would not. I'd be like wearing Uggs or something. I was never that person. Oh, well, if you don't mind, we could jump straight in.
Yeah,
Your late husband who passed, what was his name?
Grayson.
Grayson. Okay. So would you share your story with us?
Yeah. So I met Grayson when I went to the University of Minnesota, moved here from Michigan, not knowing one person. And I met him sophomore year when I was 19. He was about to be 26. Met him at a party, not like 300 people or anything, it was a friend's birthday party. And we dated and just hit it off. And my parents couldn't say anything because they were 19 and 26 when they got married. Um, so we got married when I was 22 and he was about to be 28, right after I got out of college. And then when I was 28 and he was 35, he was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And he fought for 2 years and 3 months. And then 2 days after I turned 31, I had to take him off life support.
Oh my God.
I would not wish it on my worst enemy. It was horrific. He he was in the hospital quite a lot. So we had the whole culture of the hospital and making his room like an apartment. And the nurses said, oh, the little lovebirds are in their nest and in their apartment and different things. And we'd watch movies and I would be down on my cot and he would be up in his bed and we'd hold hands from the distance,
Oh,
things like
yeah.
that. But trying to make it our normal. And for a lot of people, they're, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do that. Well, you just do it. You don't really have a choice. You do it, you revamp your life, you make it what it is. I mean, my life was counting out pills and putting them in the pill boxes and, coordinating with my parents who took shifts to take care of him for 18 out of the 27 months and, doing all these different things that, it is your new normal. And within doing that, I had to learn how to balance work, animals, husband, hospital runs. It was just, when you're driving somewhere and you realize partway there, like, how did I get here? Like, you just feel like you've been
Yeah.
zoning out.
Yes.
That's what I was like all the time. I was tired all the time, but somehow I made it work. I think that was my faith in God. I made it work. But within that, I had to figure out how to navigate health insurance. I had to figure out, I knew it was there. I knew how to utilize it, but I was just like, oh my gosh, are we going to have to pay for everything? When you're in it, all you really think about is that I don't want them to die. What am I going to do? I need to call my boss. I can't go to work. I need to be here. So, I mean, it's like you have those blinders of the horse in a horse carriage, but you need to be able to be like, okay, what else do I need? You know, there was so much joy and so much love despite all the awfulness. Like, he worked nights the whole time we were together. So we were given the gift of time of being able to spend these 2 years and 3 months together, despite, some of the really ugly parts.
Was there a time when you realized, because you kept saying, you didn't want him to die. Was there a point where you realized that that was going to happen?
So the worst day of my life ever is Wednesday, April 17th. Because I was told I'm sorry, which meant, he's going to die. And, there's nothing we can do. And they're like, we'll wait 2 days and then we'll wait 2 more. So he died on April 21st. But until then, so he was actually in the ice and he's on a vent, tube down his throat, nothing, like non-cognizant, all of that kind of stuff, totally doped out. I'm making all the decisions at this point. He was in the ICU once, same thing, and he miraculously came out of it. He had like a blood clot in his lung, which 1 in a million people survive, and he did, which was amazing. He went to rehab, he learned how to walk again, all these things, because your body atrophies, if you're not using it. And even then, I was like, he's gonna be fine. So the thing is, when you have someone that's with a serious illness or catastrophic illness, things like this, you can't think that they're going to die. You kind of know it, but you have to go on thinking they're going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. So I mean, I look in hindsight, I knew he was dying for a really long time. Um, but I told up until like the week before he died, I was planning on, I was like pricing out walkers, thinking, he'd come home and, he'd learn how to walk and we'd do all these things and, to get him healthier on track and then our lives would go on. Um, so I would say until like that day when I was told I'm sorry, I didn't think that that was it, that he was going to die.
Wow. And so you were told I'm sorry. And when was the day? What was the time between when you took him off life support? When you,
5 days. And it was just, I really felt like the medical staff, they were like friends and family at that point, just because they were so kind. And I mean, unfortunately, they've seen it and done it a lot, but he had like Peter pooped or something, and they had to lift him off the bed to clean him up. This is like a few days before he died. And he was 6'2". He was very tall, handsome, dark hair. So it's like he's on this Hoyer lift up by the ceiling while they're cleaning him up. And I'm looking up and I'm thinking, like, that's not even him anymore. I mean, this is like 4 or 5 days before he's actually died. And I'm like, that is not him.
yeah.
Whoever that is, he's physically alive, but that's not him. He's gone. So it's just those points where we have where you're just, you know it, but you don't know it, if that makes sense. Or it's like, I didn't have the luxury of believing and accepting that he would die, because it was like, this can't happen. This is my life.
Yeah. Do you think there was a point where he knew it as well?
Yeah, he actually woke up at one point, a couple days before he died, and he opened his eyes, and I just said, like, do you trust me? Do you trust me to make decisions? And he shook his head, yes. And, we had a whole conversation, just yes, no, things like that. And then he was out. It was not more than 20 seconds. So it was tough. And I'd been with him 11 and a half years. I mean, he was my whole adult life at that point. It was just horrific.
Oh my God.
But I mean, I'm signing these papers like, stop food, stop the food feeding tubes, stop all these things. But I'm feeling so at peace. And it was like I was seeing myself like floating above. And it was just like signing the papers, because he had donated his body to the University of Minnesota, all these things. And it was just like, this is what has to happen. It's like, this is like, how cool is this person that he's going to donate his body so people can study? And he did extra. So when you have leukemia or blood cancers, you have to do these horrifically painful bone marrow biopsies, which are above your lower hip, where it's this hollowed out needle that's really long. They just like, and they have to suck out the bone marrow and they anesthetize you, but it's horrifically painful still. He did extra ones of those just for research for people. When I held him and they took him off the vent, and he has these animalistic sounds, it's just me and him, and the family's been around him. The pastor's done the last rites. He's all bloated up, purple, doesn't even look like himself. It was just like, I'm here and you're here, but you're gone, and it was just, when he left, I called the nurse back in and had her confirm that she couldn't hear a heartbeat or anything. It was horrific. It was horrific, but it was so freeing. I played our favorite songs. The Luckiest by Ben Folds. I don't know if you know that song. I have the song title. You should listen to it and you'll bawl your eyes out. Do it when you have some private time.
Okay.
But I have that song title tattooed on my foot. That was our song at our wedding or whatever. So I played that. I played, Ryan Adams and New Order and like all of his favorite songs, different, Joy Division, stuff like that, as he's leaving this world. So I made a heaven playlist. So I like gave him the send off that he wanted. That's when Rachel 2.0 starts. I leave the hospital room and my life is different. I'm rebooting myself like a computer. I don't know what the F it's going to be, but I have to start over. I don't have a choice. And I believe that my grief is up and down as it was when you are, especially, so I wasn't able to have children. We didn't have kids. I didn't have anybody else I was responsible for, but the dog and the two cats. I did have time off, which was an amazing grace. I know a lot of people don't have that. I had a life insurance policy and things that I was able to take time off, thank God. And friends graciously had fundraisers and things for me. So I had extra time. I went to Alaska for 2.5 weeks. I had some healing time, things like that. But you don't get the luxury of, um, I think, especially when you're a widow with no children or widower. I mean, it's the same too when you have children, but you don't get the luxury of not moving forward because this is my life. I have to figure it out. There's only me now paying for the house. What am I going to do? How's this going to work? So it's like, he died on a Sunday, and on Monday, I'm already trying to figure out the financials for the house and all those types of things. So it was pretty quick. And what's interesting is like the year after he died was harder for me than the year. I dated someone 6 months after he died, and it was someone I knew that was a friend. And I feel like that was like just putting lidocaine on because it was a distraction. Um, and then after that, it was like, okay, I'm all alone. This is me. This is awful. What am I going to do? I'm working, I'm piecing together 3 jobs to try to afford my house and all these things.
Do you think because before you were running on autopilot, like you said, and perhaps you had thought you'd grieve before you were ready to let go, and then a year later it really hit home, maybe?
I think that you're so numb at first, and you have to be numb to survive, that when the lidocaine wears off, when it wears off, um then you're really left. But a significant thing that happened is, so we froze his sperm, which they have you do when someone that young gets cancer. And then 6 months after he died, I got a hysterectomy. No, 4 months after he died, I got a hysterectomy because my pain was so bad. So then there was a whole nother level of grief and physical needing to heal and all those types of things. And then my parents were coming and taking shifts, taking care of me. Um, so all those dynamics, and then that was in like September of 2013. And then in December, his cat got really sick and I had to put the cat down. And it was just like, how much more is happening? And like all these bad things, month after month after month, kept happening. And one of my sisters was like, well, don't tally all the things that happened. And I'm like, I can't, no, because I didn't have any family live here. So I was on my own. And what's really tricky is after you have this catastrophic thing or a crisis, people go back to their lives, right? Everyone's there for the memorial service. Everyone's impacted in their different life, but different ways, but they go back to their normal lives. And it doesn't mean that they don't care, but you're still left like, what about me?
What was your first like Christmas like without him?
Honestly, I went to who I was dating at the time with his family,
Yeah.
and it was awful. Like,
Yeah.
it was awful because it's like everybody has different traditions. I mean, the Christmas before, Grayson was in the hospital and he got out that day, but like we had Christmas Eve in the hospital, just the two of us, and watching movies. And at church, like earlier before that, the pastor did a whole service and this whole analogy using Grayson's story, which was amazing because like all the people that just go for the holidays, more. I was like, no one has any idea this is my dude who's like laying in the hospital. So it was that. And then it went to like, I'm like in negative 20 degrees in this cabin with this dude and his parents, and he's nice and he cares about me, but I'm like randomly crying about my dead husband.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm like, I want to watch, the Polar Express or something like that. And they're watching like really loud the Smurfs movie. And I was like, I have to go to bed. And I like went in the little room on the single bed I just bawled my eyes out. When an anniversary is going to come up, I don't do this anymore because it's year 8 now. But I'd say for like the first 4 or 5 years, I would take the day off of work. When it's the death anniversary, take the day off of work, get together with a friend, someone that actually knew that person, not someone new in your life, someone that knew that person. The first year my sisters came out, we had a party for my birthday because it's 2 days before. Tons of supportive people came. And then we went to like the Minnesota Zoo or something like that. So and then when it was our wedding anniversary, I would go to dinner with my friends, things like that, because you do need to replace that. You need to make your own traditions. And with holidays and different things, like you need to surround yourself. The second year after he died for Christmas, I went to my brother's house, and so it was him, his wife, his 3 daughters, and then my sister and her husband and daughter, and then me. And I just, even when it was the second Christmas, there was this huge gaping void. And at the time I was like boy crazy, like just dating up a storm, like because I was just trying to fill this void, and I was so used to being someone's partner. So I'm like just talking to like, I don't want to say losers, but like talking to people I shouldn't be online. I just had like a bottomless cup of hot chocolate with amaretto in it, like just not making the best choices. But it was like I just was needing to numb myself.
Yeah. And though that was like your stages of grief. So where do you think you're at right now?
You know what's interesting is I have his name tattooed on my wrist. That like if it wasn't on there, if I didn't have my family and people that were there and knew him, if I didn't have pictures, I might not believe it ever happened. Like
Wow.
it's, yeah, it's crazy because I've worked so hard to get here, and it's not, I mean, it's all the grace of God, but it's tough. You can choose to be better or bitter. And I wasn't always better, I was bitter. And I took time off of Facebook and things because I didn't want to see all your pretty children. I didn't want to see your lovey pictures. I didn't want to see these things because it was just so hard and hurtful when I'd gotten robbed.
Was there a point where you realized, okay, I've got to pick myself back up and I've got to keep on going?
Yes. So I was like dating and drinking way, like I was never really a drinker. I liked, Grayson was like a beer connoisseur. We live in an area, the Twin Cities, where it's like brewery haven, right? So he and his best friend Owen, they would go, check out all the fancy beer and stuff like that. And I ended up, when I went to Alaska, I ended up not on purpose, but having my own little fish and chips and brewery tour. So I became a big craft beer fan. Then I was drinking, I would get home from work and I was sad and I would stress and I would have a couple shots of vodka, like things like that. Just dating. And it was incredible how much I lost my self-worth. Like I had it, and it would be like, you have all these people that care about you. But to me, it was like, I'm alone, alone, alone. And I'm fighting. No one knows what it's like to be me. I am bitter. My person should be here. I'm tired. I'm working 3 jobs. Like, F this. It's not fair. I think that so much was just sucked out of me in the caregiving journey that then when it was my time to take care of myself, I don't know that I ultimately had anything left.
That must have been so hard. Did your family help pull you out of that?
They did. They were supportive, but I also hid a lot. I kept dating thinking that I would find the right person. And one of my sisters would be like, the one that said stop telling stuff. She was like, just don't date, just be by yourself. But when I'm saying I'm dating, I'm talking like going to a coffee shop or having a drink with someone, not weeks at a time. I think there were 2 or 3 people that I spent, maybe 3 or 4 weeks with each total. That's it over the course of like 2.5 years. So my sister's like, just be alone, just be by with you. And I'm like, I'm alone all the time. And I think that it's just hard to fathom too. Like, even though he was ill and we were together, I was also alone a lot. Like we were, and what killed me is knowing how alone he was too. He was alone in this. We were together, but he's the one that had to be at the clinic every day and the hospital while I was working, all these different things. So we were married and things were wonderful in that aspect, but I was really fighting on my own for years, even before he died.
Yeah. One thing that keeps coming up in the research that I've done before this was a big fear that a lot of widows face is ending up alone. And it sounds like you experienced that. Do you feel that you ever like got through that and addressed it head on?
Yeah, and what's interesting is I learned when he relapsed, one of the nurses was like, "You're still together." And I was like, "What?" And she told me it's like 60% of people leave their significant other that's ill. They just can't handle it anymore. The stress, they fight, they whatever. And he and I went into this like, we cannot afford to fight. So
Oh,
I don't necessarily think that it was that I was afraid to be alone. I think that it was like, I am so destined to be someone's other half. And I just wanted someone to give a crap about me, to like to talk about my day, to do those things. And I knew that I had this, despite how I was treating myself, I knew that I had this worth. I knew that I was this great person. One of my friends actually told me, she's like, Grayson did you a disservice because he was like the awesomest guy ever. And no one's really like that. So I think because I had been treated so well, I wasn't used to not being treated well. And I was thinking, what's wrong with me?
Oh,
Not that this person is not the right fit. It was like I was chasing people who did not want to be chased. But I also, because I met him when I was 19, I never had really dated either. And you have friends that you make plans with, or you can go to dinner or whatever, but then they go back to their life and you're alone, and you have a phone call here and there, you meet up with them every now and then, but you're really just like on your own planet in orbit.
yeah. That must have been a really like rough thing to go through, feeling like everyone else was carrying on and you didn't have your person. Did you find a light at the end of the tunnel?
I did. Yeah. And you know what? I think the biggest light, not even talking about romantic anything, I think the biggest light at the end of the tunnel is how pumped I am to help other people, because I could have taken this negative experience and let it destroy me forever, which it happens to a lot of people. A lot of people, I think, because I was so young, I mean, I'll be 39 in April, but because I was 31 when he died, I was like, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'll get married again. I know I'll be happy again. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think the biggest takeaway is how I'm funneling all the negativity to make positivity. And I used the other analogy the other day, how like people used to mine in the 1800s just for those little chunks of gold they might find. And if you can take out of your negative experience or difficult or whatever it is and find something positive, yes, it might take you years like it did for me, but find something positive and know that, like my passion. And I feel like I would love to be a motivational speaker and go on and, talk about this and talk about how the impossible is possible. I think that's like the huge light at the end of the tunnel, is that I'm passionate about this and that I want to help people.
So, advice for other people. Do you have any advice for people who have recently been widowed?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to just widowed, widowered, whatnot. It's so ugly with COVID because people are not able to be with their person when they're dying or things. That's the toughest, hardest part. I think just knowing that you're going to have your own timeline and don't let anybody dictate it. Someone in really close in my world was like, you, after like 6 months, was like, you should just decide to be happy. And I wanted to be like, I'm going to punch you in the face. Like, it's not anything that you can prepare for or any of that. It's your story and it's going to be different from everybody else's.
Yeah. And what can someone do to support a loved one who is going through this?
What you can do is be a good friend to someone that's going through something like this. You can be there. You can be there to listen. I think the most powerful things we can do in life is just listen, just be there. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. Just authentically care. Just give a shit, because you need to let people know that you're in their corner. And one of the things that I do is I have timers set on my phone, like alarms for whether it's my sisters, we're all in different states. So whether it's like my sisters or my brother or friends or whoever, because life gets busy and you forget, you need to check in with people, because I had to ask people, please text me, please send us cards when he's so sick, all these different things, because you do need that support. And if you have a friend that's going through loss or really tough stuff, please check in with them, because just that shooting them that little bit of text saying, hey, I'm thinking about you, is like receiving 60 texts. You have no idea what it means when they're in the middle of a storm. You can be that lighthouse just by doing something so simple.
And is there anything people should avoid saying?
I understand, or I get it, or I know what you're talking about, is just like, you better back away. Fire or fists are going to come out or something. But that's not only does it make you angry, but it's almost hurtful, because you just feel like it isolates you even more. And people don't mean to. And that's the hardest thing, is I did lose support. I lost friends. I lost different things throughout it, because some people didn't know what to do. So they did nothing. And then time slips away.
Yeah. I think that's one thing we've mentioned quite a lot on like this podcast is, even if you don't know the right thing to say, just say, I have no idea what you're going through, but I'll walk through that pain with you.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be an essay. You don't need to say the right thing. Say, I
Yeah.
know I'm going to put my foot in it, but I'm here for you.
So, you wrote a book which is about how caregivers can get through these tough times, and you wrote about your experience. Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
So I wrote this book, Wife, Widow, Now What, about how I navigated all of it. And when I'm going through diagnosis and treatment with him and all these different things, I have, how to navigate your coverage, like all laid out when you need to figure out time off of work, disability, all those types of things, questions to ask. Cause it's just those things you don't think of that when you're in the crisis, you're like, I don't want them to die. I don't want them to die. I don't want them to die. But you really have to know your stuff. You really have to know what it is. You really have to know the right questions. I advocate really hard for don't feel like you can't stand up to the doctors and ask again and again and again. And whether it's cancer or catastrophic illness, or you're the supporter or the neighbor, whether you're I wrote it specifically initially for, because it's like how I navigated the world of cancer and how you can too. But the more I'm talking about it, I realize it could be COVID, it could be anything. You have to realize, unfortunately, you really do have to look at the financial aspect. You might not be able to afford to live where you've been living. You only have one income, like the tough questions, all those types of things. So I help you navigate it all with my love story and how I did it.
Wow. And can you also share with us the exciting news you have about the campaign you're running?
So today's the kickoff. So if you go to my page, Wife Widow Now What, I will have a link on there. I am trying to raise $60,000 in Grayson's name for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and I am racing against 7 other candidates here in the state of Minnesota to raise as much money as possible. Every 3 minutes, someone is diagnosed with blood cancer. The number one childhood cancer is blood cancers. 80% of people that have a childhood blood cancer go on to have really serious health conditions. So right now the treatments are great, and that for blood cancers, and that they help you, they cure you, God willing, most of the time. But then you go on to have other issues. And what's really tricky is, unless you're personally impacted by it, it's usually not on your radar. And the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, it's amazing because they gave us patient support, a few $100s financially. They had support groups that Grayson was a part of, online and in person, where he felt like, wow, these are really my people. I'm not alone. They have all of that. I got my pamphlets, different things in the mail. And then they actually have such cutting edge research that their research is now being used, the things that have been found for other forms of cancer too. So 100% of the donations go towards the mission. And what's amazing is they spent grants to people for COVID help, to all the people that needed it for blood cancer. And the number one thing people spent money on was groceries. Most people, me included, most people don't have 3 to 6 months if they were to get laid off or whatever in savings. So you think about that. If you don't have that, what if you have an illness and you have deductibles and you have all these things, and insurance is great, but you still have all the out of pocket costs?
Yeah.
So all those uninsured things, people really do need that help. And amazingly enough, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society is able to help with several things.
Wow. So where can people find that and donate?
Yeah, you can find it on Wife Widow Now on Facebook. I have a pinned post with my link. And check out your employer, because a lot of companies will do a match. If you donate $20, you might end up donating $40.
That's a really good idea. But thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on and
Yeah, thank
sharing
you.
your story with us. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Take care.